Welcome to the Harvesting Wisdom podcast. Together we explore the vast landscapes of life, delving into the rich soil of experiences, sowing the seeds of curiosity, and harvesting the profound wisdom that each episode unfolds. Today I have with me Margaret Wilson from Denali, and appreciate everyone joining us today. Margaret is with Denali, is one of the big boys in our space, one of the leaders in composting nationally. And they don't just do compost; they do a lot of different things, remediation and that sort of thing. But I got to say, I had a community garden for years in downtown Phoenix. It was about 17 acres. And Denali came and they sponsored different charity events for foster kids and different things. And they also donated a lot of the wood chips and some of the product that they had, quite a bit to urban farmers and to our garden. And everyone I've ever worked with at Denali has been really great to work with, just really good, friendly people. And, with you guys have a lot of stress in what you have to do and what you have to accomplish, but you kind of do it with grace, I guess. So appreciate you being here, Margaret Wilson. And why don't you tell everyone out here what got you into this, but tell me a little about your bio. Where do you come from? What have you been doing?
Well, thanks for that great introduction. And we are always very willing to help the community. And a big part of what we do will grow with the more people know. So I'm very excited to be here today and talk about it. My background is actually engineering and process improvement and sustainability. So it was a natural fit when I started to work for Denali that's also really our mission. It's to repurpose waste and to make the circular economy and support it. Denali's primarily a business-to-business operation, but we do like to work with the community, especially in education and communication.
Yeah. So you where do you come from? And so you're an engineer, and people might think, oh, well, wait a second, that you're not a hippie, you're not some tree hugger person or whatever. You're an engineer. But I don't think what people don't understand is that we need engineers mostly, and big heavy equipment operators, and we need scientists and soil scientists. So composting is really at a smaller level. We can smoke the peace pipe and do things in our own backyard, but at a commercial level, regulation is important, sanitation is important, logistics are important, because it's pretty easy to lose money on what we're doing, right? So you're coming from, what's your background then? How did you get into this business?
Yes, you're spot on. Engineering is a very important piece, and none of my friends or family would accuse me of being a tree hugger for sure. But I've always been a backyard composter from my grandma's days, and all the way through whenever I had the opportunity. It's very important to reuse, recycle, reduce your footprint, and your cost is a big piece of it. And that, as a business, I think that's how we are really engaging the United States, is that recycling isn't just about hugging trees. It's about repurposing the waste, bringing down your cost, being able to regenerate that waste that you create into something valuable. Yeah.
I think the big thing is this concept of sustainability sometimes gets like a bad rub, but what it really is efficiency.
Yes.
So businesses make more money if they're sustainable, straight up. And there's no one can logically say throwing stuff away and not repurposing it or reusing it makes any sense whatsoever. The idea of burying waste materials is not logical. You can ask a 5-year-old and they'll say it's the same concept as sweeping the dust underneath the carpet, right? It doesn't make a lot of sense, right? So that is I think that's a really great point you have there. But you're from the Southwest, right? And your career path took you to the military?
It did. So I grew up in Coachella Valley,
Okay.
really a farming community.
Sure.
My parents weren't farmers, but we were around farmers all the time. The military took me to New York, and then east to Korea, and then back to North Carolina. And then I found my way slowly but surely back to Arizona. And I live out in the West Valley where there's farmers, and I love the smell of money. That's what I call the smell of the farmland.
Dirt, right?
The smell of dirt.
Not dirt,
Yeah,
soil.
it's soil, that's right. And so my 34 years in the military, I also learned that societies that repurpose their waste and take care of their environment are stronger.
But that's
I mean, we definitely, saw that the difference between, I won't say a country, but I can think of a country where they didn't have any sort of control over their waste was, you could just see it in the population. And then countries that do take care of that, look for sustainability, they're more prosperous, and just it's a better living experience for the people.
Yeah, so you got into composting, probably something you never quite, even though you knew
didn't
it,
understand
and you
it,
liked
that's
it,
for
you
sure.
understood it, but you get into this, but you don't just get in like on the ground floor, shoveling shit, so to speak.
Yeah.
Right? You literally are the general manager for the state of Arizona for Denali, and you're probably the biggest composter in town. I mean, there's big waste management companies out there, don't get me wrong, but you guys do more. You handle the city of Phoenix's yard waste, I think, right?
Yes.
You do food waste. Tell me a little about, okay, so you get into this, right? And you're using your logistics, and you're using your understanding of managing people and the discipline you get from the military, but still a bit of a learning curve for you on
Oh,
some of the
yes.
things, right? So tell me how that went, and what surprised you the most.
Well, the city of Phoenix, which we manage our compost site, is a state of the art. It's one of the few in the country with forced air. And we can compost faster than your typical backyard or even your windrow, where normally it might take you 6 to 9 months to convert green waste and organic waste to compost. We can do it in about 45 days. We get the temperature, we get the nitrogen, we get the pH, we get all the different variables, which were all new to me. Like as a backyard composter, I just turn it every now and then, and eventually it'd have dirt. But really learning the science behind that's been just fascinating. And the technology behind it has been new. My other lines of businesses where we collect used cooking oil and liquid product destruction, that's been fascinating too, because we convert the used cooking oil to biodiesel. And one of our big customers, if you know grocery stores in the state of Arizona, then you will know the grocery store I'm talking about. We take their used cooking oil and then give it back to them as biodiesel for their trucks that go around and distribute.
That's circular,
that's
right?
full
That's the
That is.
circular economy. So,
And then the Walmart food waste that we pick up from the back of the store, they sell our compost across the country. And it's a partnership, a strategic partnership with Walmart. So they are selling their own food waste back into the economy, which is fantastic.
and it's interesting because that's what you're doing here, and that's a lot. But I don't know how many years ago, it was 5-10 years ago, when I had the community garden in downtown Phoenix, and you guys were sponsoring a table. I think it was Jeff that came in from New York.
Yep.
I think you guys were kind of based. You're all over the place, but I think that was kind of your base, or maybe
Yes.
your starting point, right? And I can, and I asked Jeff, you go to parties and stuff, and you talk about what you're doing, and he's like, yeah, nobody gets it. I tell my kids are embarrassed to say, my dad, this is what he does or whatever, but I sit at the table with them, and I can talk all day long. And some of the projects you guys work on are, like dream projects, right? I think there's I can't remember the name, the canal in New York City, Fresh Kills. I don't know if you're still doing that one, but you guys were doing the remediation on that. That's like the biggest landfill in the U.S. or was, and that's been shut down. But now Fresh Kills, I'm not gonna say it's a paradise, but it is. It really is kind of cool how they all the different things. Do you know much? Have you done much research on that? Have you been to New York to check on any of that stuff or
I haven't.
talked about it?
I haven't been to that specific project, but I can tell you about a local one that we had.
Oh, okay.
Just about less than a year ago, there was one of our employees' kids played soccer in a soccer field, and they're having a real hard time getting the grass. They'd put down brand new turf. It was yellow. Somehow he became involved and said, well, let's try compost. And so they composted the soccer field, and now it's lush and green and fantastic. And everybody who's been involved in that project's a big believer now in compost. And
because
but that's just a fantastic story.
And I don't want to challenge your understanding of what's going on with that, but what physically happened? Why is that different than just putting fertilizer down or adding a little gypsum or a little nitrogen in with the water? Why does compost? What's your concept on that organic solution?
Yeah, there certainly is going to be a soil engineer who could give you a lot more, scientific answer. But to me, it is truly organic material. I think the soccer mom, so to speak, really didn't want to put down fertilizer because their kids were playing soccer on it. So that's where the soccer field was. They felt like their hands were tied. The parents didn't want poison for their kids to be running around on the soccer field, but just putting down, of course, manure has, it's a high nitrogen concentrate, but you also have the smell. And so when you look at all the different additives that you can put on the ground, and then you compare that to compost is always medium, high to excellent, where every single category, whether it's nitrogen, organic material.
It's not too hot. It releases over time.
Yes.
That's the beautiful part.
Yeah, you
right?
probably know that a lot better than I, but I can tell you that the whole concept of bringing, again, no one would accuse me of being a tree hugger, but just taking care of our environment is so important to our kids, to the environment they want to be in. The parks are more beautiful. Nobody wants to smell the manure. Yeah. So use compost. You have beautiful smell. It smells like money.
It gives
you everything.
It is interesting because as we get into, I have a degree in engineering too, and as you start getting more and more into this, you become the believer, and you become like the tree hugger. Yeah. You become the mentor of the tree hugger, right? Yeah. So it's an interesting thing because you realize that it works, and that it really, if you really pencil it out, it's not costing more, it's actually saving more. Yes. With our soils, right? So you guys, are you using any manures at all in any of your facilities?
There are some.
Or do you blend it in with some?
There are some Denali composting facilities where they do use biosolids, but here in Phoenix, we only use the green, tree trimmings, grass trimmings, that sort of stuff, and then the organics that we get from the back of the store or the back of the restaurant. Green events.
And those are all safer things. The biosolids are human waste, generally speaking. And I'm a believer in recycling everything. Right. However, they're trickier things, right? Yes. Some of these things that we recycle, because of the source, we have to be a little more careful. And the human waste, for instance, is, we eat and we inject ourselves with all kinds of weird things, and those things don't compost down. So how we use it, remediating land that may not grow for years and years, you may not grow on it, to speak of, but it's still pretty good, and it's especially good for things like, bringing the prairies back and maybe the forest back and things like that. But with your experience now, what are your big challenges? Because you guys are under more of a microscope than anyone, right? You're working with the governments. You had a visit today with the APA and that kind of thing, because there's a lot of regulation, and that's what people have to understand is that our industry is really safe because we know what we're doing and we comply with a lot of these regulations. So tell me some of the challenges with that and what's your experience with that so far? So
the biggest thing with the EPA right now, when we had a great visit with them, they came out, they really wanted to be educated. And that was surprising to me, was that they were being educated by us, which is great. that they want to learn about it. Their concern, of course, is VOCs, the odor, air quality, right? That's their concern. And
Like the
if you don't-
DEQ in Arizona.
Correct,
right?
correct. Yeah, what they don't know, they were just, they're unsure. Is it going to smell? Again, I think a lot of people think of compost, they think of manure.
Right.
They think of this smell, a lot of VOCs and the odor that comes off of it. So it was great to have them out to our site and show them that there are ways to mitigate the smell early on in the process by keeping our raw material number of days on hand, that's not sitting and not getting into the active composting stage, that we do that as quickly as possible. And then showing them the value on the back end that this is worthy of the EPA and regulatory. Maricopa County was there at the same time the state was there. The city, of course, is involved in it. For them to understand that it's not a negative, right? It's not it's not a pollution. It's a huge positive, right? So I think that's an important piece just with consumers, municipalities, businesses. It's the education behind the full circular. Your point that this is a moneymaker for them, or it's
a moneymaker for society, right?
Yeah,
it's really
at
something
minimum,
that keeps us.
Yes.
And we just need more of it.
Yes.
We need about 10 more Denalis in every state, right? So
absolutely.
Now you got involved with Arizona Compost Council. It's the state branch of the U.S. Compost Council. What's been your experience so far with that?
It's been fantastic. It's a great group, a great community. When we're outside of the community, we're somewhat of business competitors. There is some overlap there, but we all have the same mission with the Arizona Composting Council, and that's education, advocacy, and really pushing out that circular society. We have some great partnerships with other Let's Go Compost group. They've introduced us to, we actually pick up and recycle the reptile societies food waste and some of their bedding materials and help them out. So, just really that whole circular society piece has been very important. Right. And our biggest challenge from a business standpoint is education of the individuals that supply us the raw material, right? Our biggest challenge is glass. One glass bottle can contaminate the entire load, and then we're throwing that away to landfill. So
and
that's
even a plastic bottle too, because it goes through the machines, the shredders, and everything else. And what's a small little plastic bottle now becomes a million shreds, right? And maybe not totally visible to the eye. Same thing with glass. Somehow it always resurfaces after everything decomposes, and so that's a big thing. So, and that's been my major complaint or beef for us. I guess it's our society, our culture here. And it's in the States in general, because we're not at a point yet where everyone really understands how important it is. In parts of the country they do, but here the source separation is everything, because composting becomes so much cleaner, so much cheaper, and so much, the end product so much more available and so easier to use. If everyone just at the beginning of the game took this and put it in that bin and that bin. So that is the biggest challenge. And for you guys, you're doing all the yard waste in Phoenix. So when you bring it in, how do you control that? And then you also have landscapers coming to bring their material in. And how do you control or regulate that? If a landscaper's coming in over and over and over again, and they have bags of trash or waste that you can't recycle, do you work with them, talk to them, or restrict them from coming? What's the process you use? And then it's a big manpower thing too for you, right? So yes. How do you do it? How do you work with that?
Oh, it's education. We don't penalize. What is fascinating to me about the City of Phoenix transfer station is actually incentivize landscapers to participate in a clean program where they get a lower rate if they commit to this education cycle and have a clean rate. And it's amazing how many of them don't realize how easy it is, and so they don't participate. So on those, we end up, the city of Phoenix will do a first stage sorting process before it comes to us, and then we end up sorting it out. But you're absolutely right. The plastic always floats to the top.
Yeah.
So it's
And the
it's
glass
lighter,
too,
right?
which is weird.
Yeah, and I think later on this month you're going to have another podcast with one of the equipment manufacturers who's really helping us work on some equipment solutions to
Right.
capturing that. So I'll be
Because
interested to hear that podcast.
the compost ultimately seeps into the soil. That's what it's
Yep.
supposed to do, right? We can put it on top, and as it gets water and everything else, it actually gets into the soil. But the glass doesn't necessarily
Right.
drop in, or the steel, or the
plastic.
junk, or the plastics, or whatever else it is. So, and it doesn't cost anybody money. Just separate it.
Yes.
And you're right. I'm a commercial landscaper, and we take our material and shred it, but my tree guys are very particular, and we're not taking a lot of noxious weeds, and there's never, they don't put their lunch wrappers and,
Right.
and they don't put, Coke bottles or anything that they have in with that material. And we end up processing it twice, and then we end up composting it down. And that just makes life easier. It drives the cost down for everybody, right? So,
Yeah, absolutely.
and you guys are, so you've got part of the stress, I would think, and I know back in the day was you got a lot of product in, and sometimes nobody's taking the product out. And then sometimes you're in high demand where, you could push out double the amount of compost. So how do you control that flow?
Yes, we had a big debris event last summer called the monsoon, right? And we're still selling product from that monsoon season. So generally, at least in my span, it's usually too much material, not enough sales. But it has to do with cleaning. We go back to the contamination. I could sell a lot more faster
Oh my
if
God, yeah.
I didn't have to double screen, triple screen, and that's why I'm excited about some of the technology that's coming out that's going to pull that plastic out.
Yeah, there's a lot of technology out there. Right? There's magnets, and there's a lot of stuff, but there's a cost to it. And what's really important is that we have enough commercial composters out there, because you can't do it. Backyard stuff is great for the backyard, who knows? Every backyard composter does things differently. So we talk about standardization. We talk about the USDA and the EPA, and the U.S. Compost Council is there to educate and help us make sure we follow those protocols for thermophilic processing of some products, and how we do different things. And we're blenders too. And I got to tell you, we've made a fair amount of mistakes over the years, and sometimes we've taken the big one that I remember doing once is taking wood chips. They were actually from a pallet manufacturer, and they were it was really sawdust.
Oh.
And we put that in, and I made this expensive product, and my C to N ratio was way off, and I was like, what is going on? And what I realized is we needed to pre-compost that wood fiber first. And so understanding how important it is to do it correctly, you almost have to be at a commercial scale, I think, to do that, especially if you're selling it, widespread. So who buys your stuff at Denali? I mean, the average, if I'm a homeowner,
Right.
can I come on by, or is it you're selling it through distributors?
We do all three. So depending on the site or location, we could sell direct to consumer. They come to our site and the back of their pickup truck and can load it up. We sell we sell our own product called Reconserve through Walmart, with a partnership with Walmart in the bags that you would get, and then we sell to distributors like Scott's. Also, around here in the valley, some of the big nurseries that you'd be familiar with will buy some of our compost, also some of our mulch product for trees, planting trees, and that sort of thing. And they like that because, again, through that forced air, we get that weed kill. Right, we're able to maintain to get up to the 140 to 150 degrees for that extended period of time, and we get the weed kill. So
I think I've noticed that at about 130 something, 131, I can't remember what the basic minimum was, is that you can compost. But to kill weed, pathogens, or seed, because you don't just want the weeds out, you don't want to put in your garden.
you don't want to squash.
Yeah, you don't want to have like other seeds coming up in your stuff, and that has to be slightly higher, about 145. But it's an amazing process. Once that stuff starts getting hot, it can really start getting hotter and hotter and hotter. So part of it also is to not let it get too hot, or you lose a lot of your beneficial nutrients too. So yeah, your setup there is kind of sweet, the way they built that. But one of the constraints I see that you have is you're only on 27 acres.
Right.
And that is, we produce, we compost on about 6 times that amount of acreage. But you're probably putting out more product because you have to move product too.
Right. And we turn it in about 45 days.
Right.
So we hit that all the key points in 45 days.
Right.
But we do have a couple windrows too that take 6 to 9 months. But the nice part is that we do have a small footprint, but it's right near both where we're selling and where we're receiving.
Yeah.
And then we've, the modern technology
Logistics
of RFID temperature probes all throughout all of our cake piles and our windrows, so we can monitor the temperature. And that's a challenge if you're a big composter, is potential for fire, like you said.
Oh my God!
If you got after it rains, if your moisture level isn't right and suddenly it rains and you got a pocket, you can create a smoldering situation. So
the bigger piles are a little more prone to that. And some of your piles are pretty tall, but you got the forest area, you got the water, and you're moving fast enough. You're moving it across. And that's sometimes, if you're a composter and let's say you don't have the equipment. So we use a turner, and we keep a smaller, lower windrow, so they never really can ignite the same way. But I know of friends who compost, and it's a lot of the wood chips that they're turning with loaders and stuff, and they take longer to compost, but they also, as they're doing it, they have some big old piles because they just have to be economic with the land that they're using. And the reason that some of these things catch on fire is, you have your supply and demand, right? So if the demand isn't there and you're not moving it, it's going to sit. And as it sits, it doesn't take much in 120 degree temperatures here in Phoenix for that to all of a sudden ignite, and then you got a disaster. We see it with big yards with tires sometimes too. A tire yard, I always wonder how that catches on fire, and but those things can run for a year, so. But you guys are pretty much in control. You're also not just at the City of Phoenix facility, which is 27th Avenue and Lower Buckeye or something. Right. What other cities or municipalities are you in the valley?
So in Glendale, we have a fantastic liquid waste site where we pretty much polish what we call used cooking oil. So we pick up all around the state, the back of restaurants and mostly restaurants. And then we clean that, kind of sort it, get the water out, and then we ship it to Coachella, where we actually have a biodiesel plant where we make biodiesel and soaps and lubricants for the maintenance industry, so to speak. And we also do liquid product destruction, and there to if you have any sort of liquid, say a vehicle's been in a tractor's been in an accident and spilled over. We had one about 2 months ago where a bunch of beer spilled out onto the road.
That's not a toxic kind of thing.
No, it's not. It's not toxic, but to send that to a landfill would be very expensive. But they can't sell it because I guess they don't want to sell it, and so we can destroy that can, recycle the aluminum, or send it to a recycler, bale it, and sell it, and then the liquid we process and put it back into the wastewater stream.
Okay.
For the City of Glendale. We also, in the City of Goodyear, we have what we call a bakery plant Takes all of your bakery solid food waste, candy, chocolate, even ice cream, melted ice cream from cleanouts, anything you think about in food manufacturing that fell on the floor, that they're not going to sell, or anything that might have gone expired popcorn or potato chips. We take that, very similar to compost in the sense that we put it through a shredder if it's got packaging material, and then it becomes a base for animal feed.
Right. And that gets heated really quickly, right? It's
Yeah, it
more
goes through
like a
dehydrated.
chicken pellet type of
Like
thing.
a chicken pellet.
Dehydrate and you get it up in 180 degree range for a short period of time. So it's still composted technically, but
Yes.
and that's great too, because now it's, the biggest eaters in the U.S. are not people, it's the animals that we feed to eat for the people, right? But so that's a great way to repurpose as well. So, well, I look forward to talking with you more, and I'm sure we'll see you around. We're in the same circles, and appreciate you being here today, Margaret Wilson, Denali. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Take care. Okay, bye-bye. Thank you for joining the Harvesting Wisdom podcast. Click subscribe and like for ongoing insightful conversations. Explore our webpage for show notes and additional resources. Visit our guests' webpage for deeper insights. Your engagement is the foundation of our journey, and until next time, keep pursuing wisdom.